The last subway ride. Rachel checked her phone. 11:58 p.m. She was late. Again. She sighed and hurried down the steps to the subway platform. The station was nearly empty, just the way she hated it. The fluorescent lights above flickered erratically, casting long, shifting shadows. The air smelled stale, like damp metal, and something she couldn't quite place. 11:59 p.m. The subway was always late at this hour. She shivered as a cold draft brushed against her skin. Then she noticed the old man. He stood at the far end of the platform, half hidden in the shadows. His back was stiff, his face turned toward the tunnel. Something about him felt wrong. His suit was outdated, frayed at the edges, but it was his stillness that unnerved her. He didn't fidget, didn't shift his weight. He just stood there. A low rumble signaled the train's approach. She sighed with relief, stepping toward the edge of the platform. The old man turned his head too slowly. Rachel's breath hitched. His eyes locked onto hers, and a chill settled deep into her bones. He lifted a thin, bony finger and pointed at her. "This is your last ride." Her stomach clenched. The train roared into the station, sending a gust of wind whipping through her hair. She glanced at the old man one last time, but he was gone. Rachel hesitated. Had he even been real? The train doors slid open with a mechanical hiss. She stepped inside. The doors closed. And suddenly, silence. She expected the hum of the engine, the chatter of late-night commuters, the distant screech of the tracks. But there was nothing. Rachel looked around. The train car was empty. Her pulse quickened. That was impossible. She had seen at least 3 other people board from the other end of the platform. She checked her reflection in the window. Dark tunnels rushed past. But something about the glass made her uneasy. The reflection of the train seats looked off, slightly distorted, like the angles didn't match reality. She turned back toward the doors. That's when she saw the old man. He was sitting across from her now, hands folded neatly in his lap, watching her with the same eerie stillness. Rachel's throat tightened. How? He hadn't been on the train. His lips parted. His voice was dry, brittle, like paper crumbling to dust. "You should not be here." Rachel's fingers dug into the seat. The lights above flickered, and when they stabilized, the train was full. Her stomach lurched. Where had these people come from? The once empty seats were now occupied by men and women in strange, outdated clothing. A woman in a 1950s dress, a man in a soot-covered uniform, a teenager with hollow eyes, and a Walkman. They were silent, still. Rachel's breath came in short gasps. She turned to the window again, but this time, her reflection was gone. She stared at the glass in horror. The seats behind her were reflected. The passengers were reflected. But she wasn't there. A soft whisper made her jerk back toward the old man. He was leaning forward now, his milky white eyes locked onto hers. "You have to get off." Her heart pounded. "What do you mean?" The train lurched, sending her stumbling forward. Ding! A station approached, except there were no signs, no advertisements, nothing but a single dim light flickering above the platform. The doors slid open. The passengers turned their heads in unison, all staring at her. Rachel's breath hitched. She took a step back. "No," she whispered. "I'm not getting off here." The old man's expression darkened. The lights flickered again, and the passengers stood up. Rachel bolted for the opposite door. She pressed the button frantically. It wouldn't open. The train shuddered. She spun back. The passengers were closer. Their faces were wrong. Hollowed, too pale, their eyes dark pits, their mouths stretched open, but no sound came out. The old man shook his head. "You missed your stop." The train plunged into darkness. Rachel screamed. Then, silence. The next morning, a subway worker found her phone lying on the empty train car's floor. No sign of Rachel, no missing person reports, just an empty seat, and a reflection in the window that didn't belong to anyone.